This is macOS Ken.
A slew of software updates, Apple kills Constellation, and get ready to argue over music. It is Tuesday, the 14th of May, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years with special offers for macOS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macOS Ken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOS Ken. Whatever you do, do not play quartiles. My work would have been done much earlier had somebody warned me. It is frustrating, it is addictive, and it hit Apple News Plus on Monday as part of a lot of other software updates. No, quartiles is not the most important thing, just the most distracting. As we had guessed might happen Monday morning, Apple did let fly with a lot of OS updates on Monday. We'll start with the release of iOS and iPadOS 17.5. A piece from Mac Rumors says that makes way for app downloads from websites for users in the European Union, part of Apple's compliance with the EU's Digital Markets Act. The OS updates also bring changes to Apple News Plus, including an offline mode, giving users access to the Today feed and News Plus tab even when no internet connection is available. It also includes the aforementioned game Quartiles, as well as a scoreboard for News Plus puzzles. Don't just read about losers in the news, be one. Or winners, whatever. Also included in the iOS update, cross-platform tracking detection. This was a thing we had heard about being worked on, but I don't know that we knew it was coming today. A piece from Apple Insider says this is the industry standard set up between Apple and Google for detecting AirTags and other trackers hidden on a person. According to the report, the new standard will alert users on iOS and Android if a Bluetooth tracking device owned by somebody else is being used to track them. Users will get new alerts on their smartphones if an unknown Bluetooth tracking device is found to be moving with the user over time, regardless of the platform. If that is not security enough for you, the updates also came with a number of security fixes. In fact, everything Apple released came with security fixes, as it almost always does. Info about those can be found on the company's site dedicated to security releases. Next stop, your laptop. And wherever you keep your Mac, that is where we find Apple offering macOS Sonoma 14.5. Another piece from Mac Rumors only lists a couple of new features for this one. The new game Quartiles for Apple News Plus and scoreboards for puzzles in Apple News Plus. News. It's not just for news anymore. Off now to the wrist, where we find respite from quartiles in the form of watchOS 10.5. On this one, Mac Rumors has Apple saying watchOS 10.5 includes new features, improvements, and bug fixes, including a new Pride Radiance watch face to honor the LGBTQ+ community and culture. Apple also tells you where you can go if you want to know about security stuff. Hey, what's on the TV? Why, it's tvOS 17.5. You thought Apple said little about the watchOS update. Mac Rumors says so far at least the company has said nothing about the update for tvOS. Besides the fact that it's out and comes with security fixes. Out in lockstep with that is HomePod software 17.5, according to yet another piece from Mac Rumors. One more software update about which to tell you a bit later in the day than the OS updates. One more piece from Mac Rumors says Apple released an updated version of Logic Pro, introducing all of the new features that were previewed at last week's Let Loose event. Those include bringing in a virtual bass player and a virtual keyboard player to create a group of session players. Chroma Glow lets users dial in the perfect tone and choose from 5 different saturation styles to add warmth, presence, and punch to tracks. And Stem Splitter lets users separate recorded music into individual tracks for drums, bass, vocals, and other instruments. All of the updates mentioned so far are free. This one kind of included. If you've already got Logic Pro, the update is free. For iPad, it'll run Noobs $4.99 a month or $49 a year. For the Mac, it is a one-time purchase of $200. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years. One of my favorite things about fountain pens is what they say about you. Take the starter boxes put together specifically for macOS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macOS Ken. Do you go for the classic yet retro pop styling of the Pilot Metropolitan, or the more decidedly modern Lamy Safari? Both come with great paper and specially selected ink to get you going, all bundled at a discount, and all ready for you. Now, where I've been hanging out lately is in the ink section. I found my current favorite, Fisherman at Sea from Dominant Industry, on Pen Chalet. Over the years, I've collected almost as many inks as I have pens. Reds, blues, greens, Copper Noir from Monteverde is another one of my favorites. Pen Chalet has those, and so many others. From bulletproof inks to colors that pop, it's a whole other side of the fountain pen fun. And macOS Ken listeners can get those at a discount. Head to penchalet.com/macOS Ken. Check out the discounted starter boxes or use code MOK10 for 10% off purchases besides the starter boxes. Graduations, Father's Day, birthdays. Fountain pens make great gifts for other people or for you. See what's waiting at penchalet.com/macOS Ken. And a big thanks to Pen Chalet for sponsoring today's show. A correction to a story I brought you yesterday. I told you of a failed attempt to unionize the Short Pump Town Center Apple Store in Short Hills, New Jersey. Yeah, the site from which I was working confused a couple of stores. Randall was kind enough to write in to let me know that the store in Short Hills, New Jersey is called Apple Short Hills. That is the one that voted against going union. The Short Pump Town Center store is in Richmond, Virginia. Rendell says there have been no union votes in that store. Thank you kindly, sir. You win the ham. The stars are not wanted now. Put out everyone. A poetic way of saying that Apple TV Plus has canceled the series Constellation. Starring Noomi Rapace and Jonathan Banks, iMore says the show centered on Rapace's Joe, an astronaut who returns to Earth after a disaster in space, only to discover that key pieces of her life seem to be missing. I never got around to watching this one, and I'm going to need somebody to tell me whether it ends on a cliffhanger. If it's been canceled, I assume it was meant to go on. However, iMore cites a Variety piece saying the show has met its end, which is a bummer. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Banks, but between Flash Forward and Caprica, there is no room in my life for a sci-fi show that simply stops rather than ending. So goes what we call TV these days. Lily Gladstone is back in the Apple fold. I'm pretty sure we've talked in the past about the movie Fancy Dance. That stars multiple award winner and Academy Award nominee Lily Gladstone, who played Molly Burkhart in the Martin Scorsese epic and Apple original Killers of the Flower Moon. Fancy Dance is a different kind of movie. According to a piece from Cult of Mac, Gladstone stars as Jax, caring for her niece on the Seneca Cayuga Reservation in Oklahoma since the disappearance of her sister, the child's mother. The film's description says the pair hit the road and scour the backcountry to track down the girl's mother. What begins as a search gradually turns into a far deeper investigation into the complexities and contradictions of indigenous women moving through a colonized world while at the mercy of a failed justice system. The film's got a trailer and a couple of release dates. It'll play in select theaters on Friday, the 21st of June. You can see it on Apple TV Plus 1 week later, Friday, the 28th of June. And of course, you can see the trailer now on YouTube. And finally today, let's get ready to argue. Tastemakers at Apple Music have decided to name the 100 best albums of all time, and I will tell you right now, if there is not a single They Might Be Giants album on that list, I will throw down. Not really, but you see what I'm saying. Somebody is going to be upset about number 1, and numbers 2 through 100 is my guess. You want to take bets on number 1, by the way? I'd put a couple of bucks on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, though personally I like Abbey Road more. Also, are we acknowledging Thriller at this point? What about the self-titled debut album by the Stone Roses? No, it's not number 1, but it's gotta be top 100. How does trying to name the top 100 albums not end in 1,000 fights? Well, they're trying it. Calling on experts inside Apple Music as well as a select group of artists, Apple's press release on the event says the list is an editorial statement fully independent of any streaming numbers on Apple Music, a love letter to the records that have shaped the world music lovers live and listen in. They're revealing 10 per day starting yesterday. You know what that means. There are between 10 and 20 albums out there over which to fight already. No, I am not going to list them all. In fact, I'm not going to list any of them. Well, maybe we'll do the top 10, but that's 8 or 9 days from now. You can keep up with the countdown on the event's microsite, which is accessible through Apple Music. Special programming around the event is also planned for Apple Music Radio. What about Frank's Wild Years by Tom Waits? No good can come of this list, I assure you. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years with special offers for macOS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.